Hello dear all beautiful students, welcome all to our today's sessions. Once again, this is your Monish sir. We already discussed very important topics in very last class. That was the ecosystem, total ecosystem in a chart with having their difference and kinds, different types of kinds, and understanding how can you write if it is asking for pond ecosystem, land ecosystem, and as usual any kinds of ecosystem, in which way, which format you will follow. So on the basis of this part today, I just already will learn if it is the pond ecosystem, if it is the land ecosystem, if it is the other kinds of ecosystem, marine ecosystem, like that. If it is asking for that way, you can go through, understand easily. Okay, but now I want to say another important thing. It is very important that we will practice at least one ecosystem in that way, so that it will be very easily gettable, though we studied in many way about that one. So today we will discuss about pond ecosystem. Okay, pond ecosystem. We will discuss today about the pond ecosystem, so hope so you will get connecting properly as well, and you can easily understand about that. If it is asking in the SC exam or any kinds of term exam that explain that ecosystem, pond ecosystem, so what should we do and how can we minimize that one with having the features and figure. Very first time we will try to draw a figure like that. You can follow me. I just since the board is there, so I just draw it is in this size. In your copies you will go through understanding, or you will try to draw this one with having the space. Okay, that means in bold form we'll draw like that. We can make sure just like ecosystem study. Okay, I will just make you mind. There we will get some. Yes, you can go through, and there is a level of water. Of course there will be everything having in that way. There will be some insect like structure, there will be fishes, there will be snakes, like that. Many of the way you can draw the figure by your own sense. Okay, so I just try to make you mind just simply some plants in the bank of the pond. Okay, like that. Very simply I just make sure of drawing. Very simple format we can draw and figure that is pond ecosystem. So this one we can draw in this way. And first of all, I want to give you idea about the pond ecosystem. And normally ecosystem, it is asking for normal short question when it is asking for, or generally it is asking for what is ecosystem. In very last class I discussed about this one, and I told you that the students when there is an interaction in between the living things and non-living things in a distinct place or in a distinct geographical area, that is the ecosystem. So very first time we will write the definition. So if it is the pond ecosystem, mention the distinct place, so the interaction between living things and non-living things here in that pond making an ecosystem is called pond ecosystem. So in this way you can easily give the definition of that. So finally, and now I want to say how can we explain. I told you as that the ecosystem having the biotic component and abiotic component. There is two kinds. One is the biotic components, biotic component, or at first you can write abiotic component. Abiotic component, in very last class I told you, remember, I told you, please follow my last class in which way I ensured that one. At first ecosystem having the two part is the abiotic components and the biotic components. So abiotic components are of what kinds, in which way we can explain that one. So abiotic components is having the three parts and three kinds. So all types of, you can write about that. These types of components are not having living things, okay, but since it is the abiotic component, the non-living components are the abiotic components and having the three kinds of it. So very first of all, we can write inorganic components, inorganic components, inorganic components. So look at here the inorganic components, and inorganic components are actually having we can write here all kinds of gases, all kinds of, I told you as usual, similar all kinds of gas. I tell you gas and metallic ion. I told you in general understanding in very last class, you can write on that way easily, so that it will be very interesting for getting any kinds of ecosystem. I write the similar things. You can write the hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, metallic ion, sodium ion, magnesium ion, like that. So this is the important thing, inorganic components of like that. And number two components is the organic components. You can get it, organic components. Organic components. So organic components, I told you in very sincerely, you can remember that one, that all kinds of gases, okay, gases in inorganic component, and all kinds of dead bodies. Dead bodies means it is plant or animals dead bodies, it is not the matter, plant and animal dead bodies, or like that, plant debris, rotten part, dead or rotten part, dead or rotten part, okay, rotten parts of the living things. And you can write about here humus, dead or rotten parts of the living things, like the plant debris, it is rotten. We have seen the dead bodies of the any animals, fishes can dead having scenes then and mix up with them. So the humus, dead or rotten parts is the organic components make the form, that one. And third number is physical component. Physical components. Physical components, if it is the physical components, I told you that kinds of components we cannot see, and we have to get it back on that specific page, a specific case, that is light, air, soil, water, everything. So if it is asking for land ecosystem or Sundarban ecosystem, if we go through understanding about that Sundarban ecosystem, land ecosystem, that times what will you get it back? All things are similar. All things are similar, you will write. That means this part is similar for all kinds of ecosystem. So inorganic components, all kinds of gases, metallic ion, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, sodium ion, magnesium ion. Organic components, dead or rotten parts, like then humus, we can say. Physical components, light, air, soil, water. It is very simply we can understand about the abiotic components. I hope so. If you understood in my last class that the ecosystem chart with their different kinds, and I just write on them also similar things. Now we will go to the biotic components. Okay, I think you understand, and I hope so that some of you are joining there. Rahma, walaikum salam. Sharin Bahar, walaikum salam. Ainul Karim, walaikum salam. Tasin Shajjad, Ahanaf Shajjad, walaikum salam. Musab, walaikum salam. Shairin Bahar, walaikum salam. Momina Laki, walaikum salam. Hope so that you are connecting, and very important topics. It is, though these topics are simple, look like simple, but actually it is very, very important. Very, very important. You will get it back because it is very important. It is asking in the term exam, these topics. Okay. So now we already learned about the abiotic components. We will go to the biotic components. Okay. Biotic components. biotic components. Biotic components. So you know that biotic components are of three types also. We already given the chart in very last class. So biotic components, first one is the producer, and producer is also same in any kinds of ecosystem. I told you all green plants, all green plants, all green plants. In case of the pond ecosystem, the green plants are actually in the bank, around the bank, or there is some small types of these types of fungus, algae types of structure we have seen at the top level of the water, and that is the very importantly we know the phytoplankton. Okay, very tiny small green like plants floating on the surface of the water in the pond, that is the phytoplankton. So we will go through understanding about the phytoplankton. We will write the producer is the phytoplankton also here. Phytoplankton we can write about. So producer is all types of, you can write in general all types of green plants, as well as the phytoplankton, small tiny green plants floating on the surface of the water is the phytoplankton are the producer here in case of the pond ecosystem. And now second point is the consumer, and this consumer are of three kinds. You can know about that. First, primary consumer, you can write primary consumer, and primary consumer is actually like that, the consumer actually who directly depend on the producer. You know, the phytoplankton is a small tiny plant is the phytoplankton, and zooplankton is actually those who directly live on phytoplankton, they are the zooplankton. So at first you write the definition here. Of course, I didn't write the definition. You must write his one line definition here, that primary consumer are those consumer can directly depend on the producer. Then you will give the example. I didn't write here, but when you make sure the note, you must ensure this one. Okay, so primary consumer is actually zooplankton. We can write zooplankton. It is given in your book actually, totally given. Zooplankton, aquatic insect, you can write mussel, snail. Yes, actually this small fish, you can write small fish is the primary consumer. Yes, and sometimes yes, it is very importantly we can go through understanding about that important parts. And in this time somehow when you try to understand about the topics for the first time, primary consumer, you will explain about that, because you know your explanation will be ensuring the detailed study. Here primary consumer, those consumer directly depend on the phytoplankton, or producer, they are the primary consumer. And primary consumers, some example, zooplankton directly depends on aquatic insect, mussel, snail, small fish directly depends on the phytoplankton, so they are the primary consumer. We can go through understanding about that. And number two is the secondary consumer. And secondary consumer are directly dependent on the primary consumer. Is very importantly we can say about. At first you must give the definition as I have told in previous time. So secondary consumer is going on through some example. You can write the medium-sized fish, and you can see the frog. Okay, these types, many these medium-sized fish, you can write the many of the name also of the fish's name. Frog, they directly depend on the primary consumer, so they are termed as the secondary consumer. Okay, secondary consumer. And it is importantly we know about what types of example we have given here. It is very importantly we can go through. Okay, so and third one, we want to go through understanding about that points is the tertiary consumer or third consumer, you can write, but tertiary is better to write. Tertiary consumer, tertiary consumer. And tertiary consumer is actually those types of consumer directly depends on the secondary consumer, and somehow some case of the tertiary consumer can also be collected on they can sometimes for depend on primary consumer, but directly depend on the secondary consumer, so they are called the tertiary consumer. It is very important, and you can understand easily for going that one, and with having the example of that specific places, of that specific cases. It is very importantly to know. Directly frog, who directly can eat in that one. Snake, you can write. Other secondary consumer, medium-sized fish, you can write big fish here. Big fishes. Stork, you can write stork. They can directly depend on the secondary consumer. Stork. In this way, you can go through understanding about that one, that who are directly depend on secondary consumer. Amin Al Tahmid, Walaikum Salam. Noor Akhtar, Nargis Akhtar, Walaikum Salam. Hope so that you are connecting me properly as that time, and it is very important topics we already discussed. And finally another one is the which one. Look at here, I told you producer, biotic components, producer, consumer have three kinds also. Consumer 1, 2, 3. Consumer have three parts, and biotic components have also three parts: producer, consumer, and finally another one is the decomposer. So decomposer, if it is asking for decompose, they decompose. That means they can ensure to rot, and ensuring the to suppose any of the living things can have dead parts can be rotten and mix up with the soil and other parts. So that is the decomposer. And fungi and bacteria are directly do this work, so they are termed as the fungi, and bacteria are termed as the decomposer. They decompose, they ensure of having the deadly parts to decompose there, so they are known as the decomposer. And in this way we totally understand about the pond ecosystem. I hope so that you can understand. I will review once again very short form, but it is very important to know in which way we can explain the pond ecosystem. Okay, so dear students, look at here. I want to say one important thing, that is if it is asking for pond ecosystem, you will give the definition very first time. Definition means what is the ecosystem interaction in between the living and non-living things in the pond. That is the pond ecosystem. And you can also explain about their parts with them. The difference in different part is very importantly two part. One is the biotic, another one is the abiotic components. And then we can explain about them, that abiotic components are of three types: inorganic, organic, and another one physical components. We already discussed about that. And biotic components having that part, the producer, consumer, and decomposer. Producer, I told you that all green parts, phytoplankton like. Consumer directly depend on the producer: zooplankton, aquatic insect, mussel, snail, small fish. This is the pond ecosystem figure we have seen. Secondary consumer, medium-sized fish, frog, they directly depends on primary consumer. And tertiary consumer is actually going on through their those example we can give it there. They directly depend on the secondary consumer. So snake, big fish, stork is the example of them. And after consumer, there is the decomposer. When they'll spend their lives, they can be dead, or any kinds of hammering, and on that times there will be dead parts can be rotten and mix up with them by the decomposer. Fungi and bacteria are the great example about that. So I hope so in this way you can explain that one. I gave you a SW task. You will write as me, similar format, the ecosystem of Sundarban, that means land ecosystem, same way what I given here. who are not joining in very first time of my class, you can, after this time, you can join there and please collect and again do the class. That's all about today. Hope you will get better in the next time. We'll discuss another new topics. Till then, everyone, stay safe, stay sound. Allah Hafiz.